What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things. I'm stoked for today's video because behind me on the truck right now is the version 2.0 of the prototype Freespirit recreation tent. Now this is going to be a lot of information all at once to kind of show you guys this tent, show you some of the changes that we made and some of the changes that we're going to be making going forward. So without getting like super into detail, I'll leave a link for the older video right up here in the corner where I was testing out another tent, which I use all of my input from to bring this guy to life with the guys at Freespirit Recreation. I put this tent on my truck just a few days ago, right before Overland Expo Mountain West up in Loveland, Colorado, and I've already got 3 nights in it so far. There are some things that I absolutely love about it, but there is also some stuff that needs a little bit more work. So we're gonna start from the closed position. I'll give you guys a walk around of the full thing, talk about some of the features, some of the things that we did change, some of the things that we are going to change again on the next iteration, and then we'll pop things open and show you the really cool parts which will be found inside of the tent. Now, when it came to making designs and sort of changes that will make a tent fit my own lifestyle, there were a few things that I wanted to keep in mind. The first one being lightweight. I really like lightweight tents. I don't think a tent really needs to be much over 150 pounds, and there are a lot out there on the market that are well over that. My sweet spot, just kind of like guessing based off of the stuff that I tested, is around 100 pounds. If we could make it less than that, that would be great too. Now, I haven't actually weighed this tent the way that it sits right now, but I'm assuming it sits right about the 90-pound mark. Once we work on this some more, I will come back with some actual detailed specs on it, but it is definitely lightweight. I probably could have loaded it myself, but we loaded it up there with 2 people, and the process was really easy. The second thing that I wanted was a pretty slim profile. This right here is very slim. We're looking at about 4.5 inches thick, and honestly, we could use a little bit more thickness to it. Because of some of the features that we've added to the inside, I wouldn't mind seeing this tent just a little bit thicker. A lot of people really like slimline tents as well because they think it really affects your miles per gallon. With the overall dimensions of this tent right now, we're looking at about 81 inches long and roughly 52 wide as of right now. That makes this tent perfect for long bed truck applications. So I currently have an access cab, 6-foot bed, and because of that, it mounts up to the bed, looks nice and flush, nothing overhangs, and it does not poke up above or over top of my cab. And then I guess the third main thing that's always on my mind is the price point of the tent. We don't have an exact price point of this thing yet, but we're hoping to keep it around the $2,000 mark. When you compare that number to a lot of other similar options out there on the market, I believe that this is going to be the best bang for your buck. Again, I don't know for sure what the pricing will be, but already the material choices, the features and functionality of this tent, in my opinion, definitely make it worth that price point, as long as we can reach that. And over the weekend, I was also questioning friends and other people, some of you out there who watch my videos. People were coming up to check out the new tent, and I said, hey, what do you think about this feature or that feature? What do you think a tent like this should cost? And I think everyone else that I talked to was also pretty stoked about it. So let's dive in a little bit deeper and take a look at some of the changes that were made, that were not made, and changes that will be made in the future. Now, as we take a look at this tent, take a nice hard look at it, but don't look too close. The reason I'm saying that is because we wanted to have this tent ready for the Overland Expo to kind of show what was coming down the pipeline. One thing that Freespirit wanted to do is to be fully transparent about this entire process of like developing a new tent, something that I have never seen from other tent companies before. So just be warned, this tent in particular is one of a kind, and it was put together basically by hand in just about 2 weeks before the expo. So when you look at things like the corner here, this is actually a corner that you may find on some other FSR tents, whereas the top corner, we didn't really have a time to make a mold and make a piece that fits on there nicely, so a lot of that stuff was done by hand. We do have a whole metal shell to this thing, and then all of the fabric on the inside will be replaceable. I'll be able to show you that a little bit more once we have it open. So let's take a look at the top here. Instead of using that tonneau style cover material, this is sort of like a ripstop nylon. I don't know the exact name of this. The guys at Freespirit would be able to tell you, but I really like this as opposed to the tonneau cover material because that stuff, as soon as it gets dirty, it just sticks in all of the little cracks that basically look like fake leather, and this one just has a really clean look to it overall. One of the things that I was sort of suggesting was a top panel underneath here, whether it's like a thin piece of plastic, maybe even aluminum, but that has not been implemented yet. We need to have like a harder cover underneath here, that way this thing doesn't sag. If for some reason you take like a tree branch to the top of this, it could rip. So if you have a harder backing underneath there, it'll be less likely to rip and it'll end up being way more durable. Now coming underneath the tent here, we can take a look at the underside, and this is where you find a lot of the weight savings. This is using a very similar style to a lot of the other Freespirit tents, and I believe it's called EPE. It's essentially a water-sealed mattress that rests on top of these cross-member supports. So there's no metal underneath here, which would obviously add some unnecessary weight. We may be able to do like a really thin panel on there, although I really don't think it is necessary. And then that is held down with some straps all the way across. All of the bars on here are of course aluminum, and it is mounted up with 2 aluminum bars that run front to back. I believe we may add a third for structural support, and then we may also add another bar closer out to the edge here, that way you have a little bit more rigidity when sitting on the edge of the bed. That is also something I can show you guys when we get inside. Now since this one was kind of rushed, that way we could debut it at Expo, we're still using these mounts, which I'm not particularly stoked on, but like I said in the previous video, I could make my own mounts for that. And the road getting up to where I'm at right now was a little bit bumpy, and this thing has been holding on. Got a couple 100 miles with the tent on the truck now, and it works, it just doesn't look super nice. Now on the outside here, you'll notice these little rings, and these are going to be for a ladder, which I particularly don't use. I don't really need it because this, for me anyway, is mainly a rear entry tent. However, you can enter through the windows on the side. I believe we are going to make the ladder of this tent optional. For someone like me who wants to get a nice high quality tent with the least frills possible, I don't need a ladder, so why do I want to pay for it? That's one way that we're going to be able to keep the price down a little bit. And you will also find those little rings on the back of the tent and on this side as well. I figured we might as well just put them all over the tent to see what people would like. I'm not sure which of those is going to carry over to the final version, but I believe any of them would work. Now for the latching system, when we look at the side of the tent here, you will notice that it is bowing out a little bit in the middle here, and that is all kind of stemming from one problem. Like I mentioned, this tent could be a little bit thicker. We're still sitting like, man, almost 3 inches below my cab height. So we could make it a little bit thicker, but that main problem is actually coming from inside of the tent as well as these latches. These latches are nice. I like them a lot more than the zippers that were on the previous tent that I tested. So this setup is way easier to pop up. But as you can see, we only have 1 on each side, 2 in the rear. I would like to have at least 1 more, maybe over here, or we could even do 3 down the side. That's something that we might be able to make modular if we put some L-track on there like some of the other FSR offerings, but it definitely needs to change a little bit. Because of how this tent is sort of like packed in right now, I actually had to throw a bungee cord on here, that way they do not pop open. We noticed that this bracket here is kind of at an angle, so we either need to change like the dimension or the shape of the actual frame of this tent because it's just not super tight right now. That's something that will absolutely be fixed. So let's pop this thing open and check out the inside. All right, I haven't actually tested this yet, but let's do a setup timer. We did it on the last one fairly quickly. I'll also pop it up on the screen so you guys can see in real time. There is one more step to set up on this tent than the previous one, but that couple extra seconds that it takes to do what I'm about to do makes this tent way better than before. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Done. So that was like 40 seconds, maybe a little less than 40 seconds with just a little hiccup there. But now you guys can probably already tell one of the major changes that was made. So when we're looking at the side profile of the tent here, you can tell it's still a wedge, but a lot of wedge tents stop right here. like the previous one did. Instead of using the door as a rain fly like I kind of was on the other one, we decided to incorporate it all into this tent, kind of like a lot of the other Freespirit offerings. Now, one of the things that actually differs this design from some of the other offerings, at least for right now, I think Freespirit might take this design that we put together and implement it on some other ones. But the crossbar holding up the actual rain fly of this tent does not have any retention clickers in it, so you really just push it forward to close it and pop it out to open it. There is one bar found on the inside which will sort of pull everything taut, and can you believe that this is like still a rough prototype? It's already looking super close to a final production version, but there are still some changes we need to make. So starting over here at the hinge side of the tent, you'll notice that we still have an electric pass-through. My complaint on the old one was that there was an electric pass-through on the material for the outside, but not on the bug screen that was on the inside. So I ended up just poking a hole through the bug screen, and it's not a great way to do things, but I was sort of getting ideas for this tent right here. Since the bug mesh is now on the outside, this is just a simple pass-through right to the inside. That way I can string up lights all around this tent, and it makes it super clean and easy. Now with the bug mesh on the outside, this bug mesh is definitely higher quality than the previous version that I was testing. If you look past that, you'll notice a sort of hexagonal pattern, and that, my friends, is tri-layer, which FSR is basically known for at this point. Living out here in Colorado and coming and camping in high elevation places like we're in right now, it makes camping even in the summertime pretty cool. Like right now it feels about like maybe 65 degrees, but tonight it's gonna get down a lot lower than that. When I was sleeping in the tent up at Expo, it did get a little bit chilly at night, but I was toasty warm in this thing. And we'll talk about that some more once we're actually like out here camping with this. Now you will also be able to tell how a lot of this fabric, or I should say all of the fabric, is actually replaceable. We have the ability to make different rain flies in the future, maybe with some custom camo patterns on them. You kind of get the idea. The EPE foam bottom and all of this stuff can be pulled out of the actual shell of the tent and it can be replaced. Odds of that happening are pretty low, but it's nice to have that functionality. If we come around to the driver's side of the tent, you will notice that everything is mirrored. The massive windows, the tri-layer, the bug screens, the struts. I don't have to like put anything into place like it did before. I just simply lift the tent and it goes right up. We also have the electric pass-through on this side and the orange trim. That's something that I personally wanted. I think it looks great. It's not really on brand with FSR. Their tents are typically grays, whites, blacks, and stuff like that. Still very aesthetically pleasing tents. But obviously, I love orange. I got little splashes of orange all throughout my truck, and I really like this. Will this be carried over into the final version? I don't know, probably not. Let me know what you guys think. But like I said, all of this stuff can be sort of changed, and maybe we can end up doing some like exclusive runs of these tents. So now before we go up to the door, right here you will notice this little elastic bungee cord. This is what puts compression on the sides of the tents when you are closing it up. Previously, you would have to like unhook a side or just kind of lay along the side of the truck. So now we actually separated it. There are two little hooks here with O-rings. So when that cable is stored and you're actually using the tent, it just kind of falls down along the side here where water beads up off the tent and then runs out the bottom. And then when the time comes to close the tent, you simply unhook them, hook them in the front by the door, and then it will compress the sides as you're closing it up. Now coming up to the doorway of the tent, I'm happy to report that I mentioned that these bags should be removable, and they now are. So we have boot bags. You could throw tools or anything in here, and those simply clip into place right here. I don't really have the need for that because of the Diamondback cover, so I just kind of kick my shoes underneath of that. But that is nice to have for people who want that functionality. We actually went camping 2 weeks ago. I tried making a video and then it rained all night. I kept my shoes in this bag on the other tent, and I woke up in the morning with puddles in my shoes because there was no mesh or even drain holes in the other bags. So now if for some reason water would get in here, it wouldn't because these flaps are designed a lot better, but the water wouldn't pool up in there. So mesh backing on the boot bags, again, super nice touch. Speaking of things being removable, one of the things that I mentioned in the last video was a pull down strap for when you're closing the tent. There was a strap that sort of hung here. Didn't look super nice and you couldn't actually remove it all the way. So in that bag is a removable strap, which I won't even need because I'll show you guys how I can close this thing then. Now, stepping up onto the tailgate, you'll notice up here, it does have a tri-layer door. Big old bug screen. Let me actually let some light in here, show you guys how big these windows are. They are huge. So one of the changes that was incorporated, which I kind of talked about in the previous video, was when you're sitting on the edge of your tent, like I do pretty much every time we're out camping. I didn't like how the little door slash awning thing hung so low, especially when you have to use little tension rods to like keep it in place. So now this whole awning is supported by this bracket here. Like I mentioned, you don't have to like collapse it at all like you have to do on some of the other tents. And we also made it extra tall, that way as I'm sitting on the edge of my tent looking out at the views out here, I have a clear line of sight directly in front of me. This is my vantage point here from being about 5'10", and this does not get in the way of my line of sight at all. Just makes the tent feel more open and kind of more welcoming. Now from the top of the tent over here, behind this zipper, that's where you will see this little tension bar. So that is the thing that takes like a couple more seconds to put into place. If I undo that, this will close up. The proper way to do this would be to run it on the inside of the zipper, push that out into place, and then push the lock over. A little tricky to do one-handed, but now you do not see that bar. So with the combination of this new rain fly, having the door be a little bit higher, and overall just give the tent more structural rigidity, it already makes this tent feel like a way better product, and it's not even done yet. You'll also notice that there is quite a lot more room in this tent, because previously, right where I'm sitting on the edge here, the door of the tent would kind of come up on an angle similar to the window behind me and just go straight up to the corner of the tent. Now I have all of this extra room, so the tent not only has more functionality, but I think you could sleep a taller person in here even more comfortably than before. I took a few clips here of laying in the tent while I was up at Expo. The angle of the actual top of the tent is even a little bit higher, so I laid with my head down by the hinge side. That's not how I currently sleep, but it actually works okay if you want to have your feet by the door. And then I flipped around and slept the other way, and when you're looking up at night, you have so much room here above your head. One thing that I actually did was take my lantern, little LED lantern, and I hung it from this crossbar. There will be lights implemented in this tent. There's actually some Velcro stripping that goes around this entire thing for an LED light that you simply plug in. But again, this tent was kind of rushed, and that way we could get it to the expo, so I do not have the lights in it currently. Now, sitting here looking out at the door, you will notice that with that extra space that we added with that whole little like rain sort of annex awning type of thing, we also have the ability to add some more pockets. And since I sleep with my head up here, I figured some little dump pouches would be a good idea at the bottom. Having pockets at the top on most tents honestly doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because when you're laying or sitting in bed, it just makes it a little bit harder to reach. So we opted for 2 pockets on each side, and those come in handy. Now this is the way that I typically sleep, with my feet pointed towards like the roof end. Over here, for some of the changes that we made, of course, you can now see the electrical pass-throughs coming to the inside. These actually have zippers on the inside, which make it nice and easy. This storage pouch on the other tent was extremely annoying. It was fixed up here with like bungee cords and elastic. These are actually like nylon straps now, which means when you put items in here, it doesn't completely sag down and hit you. So there we have my iPhone. You could put your car keys and a bunch of other stuff in here. And if it does even sag a little bit, you can just tighten these up and keep that thing up there against the roof and away from you, giving you more room and just making the tent feel a little bit bigger overall. Another change that I would like to implement would be down here by the actual hinge of the tent. This is that Velcro that I just showed you guys. This is where the lighting strip will actually be put in place. I would like to see at least 1, possibly 2 pockets down in the corner, kind of like we have up here towards the front of the tent. A nice simple pocket down there to hold a rechargeable battery would be really nice, because that is what you're going to put your actual light into. Now, as far as the windows and window coverings go, as you can tell, nice and big. I was hanging out in my tent quite a lot over the weekend, and even though it was super hot, and we do have tri-layer material on this tent, the tri-layer material is only found on the windows and doors, so it's not completely sealed up with insulated fabric, and this is something that I actually like. It keeps the weight down, and it also makes the tent maybe a little bit more breathable. So when you roll the tri-layer windows down, you could either have them like this and actually put your mattress on top of it or your sleeping bag on top of it and sort of sleep on like the cushioned insulated material, or you could opt to just sort of roll it up and tuck it down on the side here. That way all of the extra material is out of your way. Now, before we talk about the thing that I'm sitting on right now, one last thing: the vents. These vents on the ceiling up here have been redesigned just a little bit. It still has a standoff on the outside, that way you can prop the vent open. You then have bug screen, but now you have a flap on the inside, making this tent super dark, and it also gives you the ability to basically close up the tent from the inside. So this is what it looks like while it is closed up. And then if we look at this side over here, you have the actual little kind of like awning vent popped out. And then here we have the fabric that was covering it rolled up and velcroed into place. There are also some little rings scattered throughout the tent, which is nice for hanging some accessory interior lights, even though this tent will probably come with lights. And then also the fasteners over here by the door to keep the tri-layer fabric and the actual bug screen up into place. These are now Velcro fabric, which I really like. It is a super easy process to get things kind of nice and rolled up. So I would roll up this bug mesh and then take that little piece of fabric, hook it around, and then put it through this fabric loop right here on the outside. It's just a really quick and easy design choice that makes my life easier, and also when you're avoiding metal and plastic, you're not going to get all the jingling noises that you get with some other tents that are out there. It's kind of windy right now and my bug screen door is wide open, and as of now this tent is quiet. And now for the final piece of the puzzle, the thing that I've been skipping over, we're talking about comfort. This has been the most comfortable rooftop tent that I've slept in the longest time, probably ever, if we're being honest, and it is because of this new prototype mattress, which Freespirit Recreation, I believe, is going to be calling their Air Core mattress. So this thing is sort of like a hybrid memory foam / air mattress, and as you can see, when the air is sucked out of it, it gets really thin. There is an intake and sort of like a deflate side to this thing, so because there's memory foam in here, if I open up this valve, this mattress is going to expand. Now, because we were in a hurry to get this tent on the truck before Expo, this mattress is not the right size, and that is actually where I ran into issue. This is currently molded for a 55-inch wide tent, and because of that, when I do pump it up, it sort of like plumps out the sides of the tent, which is completely fine. It just doesn't quite fit perfectly, so that issue will be taken care of in the future, whether we make the tent a little bit thicker, maybe a little bit wider, or we just make a whole new mattress to fit the tent perfectly. That issue will be resolved. And then also, the valves on this are not correct. I did use a tiny little air pump to actually overinflate this thing. If I unscrew this valve now, you will see this thing pop up. Let's do this actually. So this is just atmospheric pressure. If I let this thing sit here for a couple minutes, it will fluff up, it won't be all wrinkly, and it will really fill up almost this entire tent. Now you'll notice the valve on here is pretty big, and a normal like air mattress pump does not fit that very well, so I had to actually pack this thing up, take it home, and suck the air out with a shop vac to get it back down to this size. So I absolutely love this mattress. I believe it's going to be coming standard in a lot of the FSR tents. However, this one doesn't fit this particular prototype right now. Makes it a little bit of a hassle, but damn, it is so comfortable. I had people laying on this thing all weekend, and the first thing for basically anyone who lays in a tent, whether you're into rooftop tents or not, as soon as they hit that mattress, they're either going to be like, yeah, I guess I could sleep here, or they're going to be like, wow, this is comfortable. This is better than my bed at home. And when you have something that is super comfortable like this right here, it just makes the rooftop tent camping experience a whole lot better. So there you guys have a first look at this new 2.0 prototype of an FSR tent. I'm not exactly sure on the name. I kind of have an idea of what it might be, but we'll save that for the next iteration. which could possibly be the final production version. I'm gonna be testing this tent out for the next couple weeks, maybe the next couple of months, until I decide all of the necessary changes that we need to make this thing a super lightweight, comfortable, and affordable kick-ass tent. And then once we start making those changes, I'm gonna keep you guys filled in. I think it's pretty interesting to see how tents like this can be developed, and most tent companies don't really talk about it, but we're trying to be as transparent as possible here. So if you guys have any questions at all about this thing, let me know in the comments down below. I'm going to try to answer everything as best as possible. As far as closing this tent up, I'm actually currently filming another video right now, which will come out either before or after this. So when that video comes out, I will actually be closing up the tent then. We're actually at our camp spot right now, and we're about to set up shop here for the night. I will tell you though, the breakdown of this thing is super easy, minus the whole mattress thing that I just talked about. So stay tuned for that video. I'll leave a link for it somewhere here in a card or in the description down below whenever that comes out. And I think that is going to be all for today. So if you guys are new to this channel, consider clicking subscribe. I make new videos every week. As always, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.